Hey guys, so today we're continuing the History, Flaws, and Cancelled series going back to Dodge, this time the Dodge Intrepid. For these types of videos I look at the history of the car, major flaws, and why it got cancelled. I'm making my way through many of the Mopar cars, so we've already done a lot of Dodge, Chrysler, and Jeep vehicles. So let's get started for the Intrepid. If you're new to these types of videos, the first part focuses on looking back at the history of the car and all the details and specs, and then we jump to talking about the events that led to the car being cancelled, and any flaws that it had. The Intrepid lived through 2 generations and 12 model years from 1993 to 2004, so we're going to start way back in 1986. There's an interesting story about the design of the Intrepid. Designer Kevin Verdun had designed a new aerodynamic concept sedan in 1986, calling it the Navajo, and it was finished at the clay model stage. Around this time, Chrysler Corporation purchased Lamborghini, who were going bankrupt. This Navajo design was reworked and it would become the Lamborghini Portofino, which was released as a concept at the 1987 Frankfurt Auto Show. Many people saw that design as a success, so Chrysler was confident to go ahead with their revolutionary cab-forward design and make a production sedan. This new platform was called the LH platform. To make a long story short, Chrysler bought American Motors Corporation in 1987, and they started to design the replacement for the Dodge Dynasty. The new vehicle design would start with the Eagle Premier platform, taking the longitudinal engine mounting layout, as well as the front suspension geometry and the braking system. The first generation of the LH platform cars would debut at the 1992 North American International Auto Show in Detroit as 1993 models, and those would go until the 1997 models. So that included the Chrysler Concorde, Eagle Vision, and Dodge Intrepid to start. The Intrepid was a full-size front-wheel drive 4-door sedan, and in the US it replaced the Dodge Monaco as Dodge's largest car. It was also available in Mexico, where it replaced the Dynasty, and in Canada, where it was sold as a Chrysler Intrepid. There was also a 1989 Dodge Intrepid concept that you'll see on screen. Back to the production Intrepid, it was available in 2 trim levels throughout the first generation, a base model and a sportier ES model with more standard features. The base would begin at $16,420 back in 1993, while the ES came at close to $18,000. By the last year of the first generation in 1997, the base had rose up to almost $20,000, while the ES was almost $23,000. I've also added an inflation column that shows what the price would be in today's dollars. As I've mentioned, the Intrepid was also available in the Mexican and Canadian markets, and a few were exported internationally as well. Taking a deeper look at the exterior, Chrysler had people excited with their cab-forward design. The passenger cabin gets pushed forward so the front doors will sit right at the edge of the wheel wells, and the windshield is extended forward over the engine. The rear wheels are shifted back towards the far corners of the vehicle as well. By moving these wheels farther towards the edge of the car, this cab-forward design makes for a larger and more spacious interior than other vehicles that are similar in physical size. Everything ahead of the cabin, including the engine, will get packed into a much smaller space, and that leaves more room for the rest of the car and the interior. Although the Intrepid is aimed at the competitive mid-size family sedan market, so think vehicles such as the Ford Taurus, Chevy Lumina, Honda Accord, Toyota Camry, and Pontiac Grand Prix. This cab-forward design did create enough interior volume for the Intrepid to be classified as a large car. The interior was quite spacious with good headroom in the front and back, and 3 adults could fit in the back without too much crowding. The cargo space was decent, and the trunk opened at a bumper level to allow for easier loading of luggage. There were good ergonomics, as most of the instruments and controls were placed in logical and convenient places, but people did have a problem with the climate controls, which were too low. As with most Chrysler vehicles around the time, many people were not a fan of all the lightweight plastic found on the dashboard and the door panels, as those materials were just not very durable. Many cars also had creaks and rattles even when they were brand new. And finally, for the interior, there was quite a bit of road noise, especially at highway speeds. Moving on to performance, there were 2 V6 options, a 3.3-liter V6 and a larger 3.5-liter V6, and both were paired with an electronically controlled 4-speed automatic transmission. Both the base and the ES models came with the 3.3, while the 3.5 was optional and cost extra. The 3.3 started with 153 horsepower and 177 pound-feet of torque, but that would grow up to 161 and 181 in 1994. Gas mileage was rated at a solid 19 city and 27 highway. The 3.5-liter V6 would have 214 horsepower and 221 pound-feet of torque, with an EPA rating of 18 city and 26 highway. Interestingly, just one state would get a flex-fuel 3.3-liter engine, and that would be California, so that engine can run on 100% gas, 85% methanol and 15% gas, also known as M85, or any combination of the two. And neither Intrepid was very quick if we look at performance times. The 3.3 engines could get to 0 to 60 in 10.2 seconds, and the quarter mile in 17.3 seconds, while the ES with the 3.5 V6 could do 0 to 60 in 8.7 seconds, and the quarter mile in 16.3 seconds. On screen you'll see all the standard features. The ES model will add 4-wheel disc brakes, power locks, 16-inch wheels with better tires, and stiffer touring suspension damping on top of the base model. And some of the options here included traction control, a power sunroof, bench front seat, and child safety seat. The final thing to see before we move on to the second generation would be the various updates over the years. So 1994 saw the 8 horsepower increase on the 3.3-liter V6, a new variable assist power steering rack for easier parking, and the ES touring suspension was standard on the base models. 1995 added anti-lock brakes on the ES models, a cancel feature on the cruise control, and a Ram logo. 1996 added the auto stick feature where you could manually shift the automatic transmission, and this was the first transmission of its kind available in a mainstream car. There were also efforts in this year to add sound deadening to quiet the road noise. The LH cars were redesigned for the second generation, beginning with the 1998 model year and going until 2004 for the Intrepid. So there were new engines, new models, and a new look. 1999 still had the base and ES models, and you can find the pricing on screen. In late 1999, an RT model was added with a sticker price of $24,435, and that went until 2002. In 2001, the base model was renamed to SE, and by 2002 there were 4 models offered: SE, SXT, ES, and RT, with the pricing ranging from near $21,000 for SE to over $27,000 for an RT. As for the exterior, the body shells were stronger and stiffer, with better suspension mounts and integrated side impact protection. Many people complimented the design, saying that it looked sculptured and it wasn't ruined with a lot of chrome or cladding. Unlike the original LH sedans, which kind of had a cookie cutter template and they mostly all looked the same, this time around Chrysler tried to give each LH car their own unique look, and none of the LH sedans actually shared any sheet metal. This time around, the Intrepid had a sporty and muscular look, with new quad beam headlights that wrap around into the sweeping hood line, aggressive front bumper and lower grille, a curvy roof, and a short deck lid. The interior also remains roomy, and the quality was improved from the first generation, with better materials, colors matching better, and the gaps between the plastic were minimized. The front bucket seats have good back and lateral support, with upscale fabric upholstery, and if you pay extra, you can opt for the leather package. To maintain the sporty feel, black on white gauges were added. The visibility was slightly reduced for the second gen from the out-of-sight front bumper and the small rear window, more so than other traditionally styled vehicles. And finally, the trunk now has 18 cubic feet of cargo space, which is 2 more than the first gen. Shifting to performance, this generation had 3 different V6s, all paired with a 4-speed automatic. The auto stick feature was available on various models, but it would always come with the RT. Starting in 1998, there were 2 new all-aluminum engines, a double overhead cam 2.7-liter V6, and a single overhead cam 3.2-liter V6. The 2.7 would last the entire generation until 2004, with a power output of 200 horsepower and 190 pound-feet of torque, along with the best available gas mileage of any of these engines. The 3.2 was the option for the ES model, with a more powerful 225 horsepower and 225 pound-feet of torque. However, that engine would only last until 2001 before it got discontinued. The best available engine in terms of both power and reliability would be the 3.5-liter V6. There was a regular version and a high output with various changes that you'll see on screen. The ES models got the regular version with 234 horsepower and 241 pound-feet of torque. The RT models started with the high output for the first 2 years with 242 horsepower, but that would get bumped up in 2002 from PCM changes, so it would go up to 244 horsepower when running on 89 octane fuel. Finally, in 2003, the 3.5 high output got raised to 250 horsepower on the SXT models after the RT was discontinued in 2003. Performance times would increase slightly over the first generation. The ES models with the 3.2-liter V6 had a 0 to 60 of 8.4 seconds and a quarter mile of 16.2 seconds, while the RT with the 3.5 had a 0 to 60 in 7.8 seconds with a 15.8 second quarter mile. So those are pretty respectable times for a large sedan. I'll now show the various changes throughout the years on screen. 1999 got some minor interior changes, and a Chrysler Sentry key theft deterrent system. 2000 would add variable assist steering and a CD player. In 2002, the 3.2 V6 was cancelled, while the RT models got that extra 2 bump in horsepower. Chrysler also began cost cutting this year, taking away many basic features such as various lights and switches. 2003 saw the RT model discontinued, but the 3.5 engine, as we said, was kept for the SXT model and got the bump to 250 horsepower. As for some other interesting facts about the Intrepid, the second generation was sold to different fleets and governments. Some of the uses were as police interceptors, fire chiefs, and taxis. These cars would get some styling differences, for example hubcaps or plastic intake vents for better cooling, along with extra wiring in the trunk to support strobes and flashers for the cop cars. The Intrepid also made its NASCAR debut in 2001 after Dodge had been out of competition for 18 years, and it continued to be used in NASCAR until 2005 when Dodge used the Charger instead. The Intrepid would remain unchanged for the last model year in 2004, and then Daimler Chrysler quietly discontinued the car after that. The last Intrepid was built on August 30th, 2004. So that'll bring us to the next part of the video, which looks at the reasoning for the cancellation and the flaws of the Intrepid. I've come up with 4 different reasons and/or flaws referring to the car or Chrysler decisions. Before I start with those reasons, I will say that for the most part, people were happy with their Intrepid in terms of the overall package that it provided. It had a modest price tag, but was a big 4-door sedan that could carry a family, and the automotive industry praised the car for its handling and athletic looks, which was a large step above its predecessor, the Dodge Dynasty. The Intrepid also made Car and Driver magazine's 10 best list for 1993, 94, 98, and 99, and both generations would win the Consumer Guide's Best Buy award at some point. The car also sold well in the early years, helping Chrysler in times of financial stress, so it was a pretty solid vehicle overall. However, the point of this series is to try to find why these vehicles got cancelled and investigate their flaws, so here are my reasons. The major reason why the Intrepid was cancelled was because Chrysler had developed the LX platform to supersede the LH platform, and by 2004, they decided the time had come to release the new stuff for the 2005 model year. The LX platform is of course Chrysler's full-size rear-wheel drive platform, and that was used for the 05 to 10 Chrysler 300, 05 to 08 Dodge Magnum, and 06 to 10 Dodge Charger. A shortened version of the platform was called the LC, and that was used for the Challenger when it came out in 2008. The LH sedans had been out for a while by 2004, and they weren't meant to last too long, plus they seemed to be getting outdated pretty fast and they were no longer very modern. The LX platform was already in production and ready to go, so there was no need to keep the LH platform around, and the new LX vehicles simply replaced them beginning in 2005. Carrying on the discussion from reason number 1, if we do look at the sales figures, they were strong right until 2003 when they started to fall off, and then Chrysler barely sold any in 2004. The cab-forward design was revolutionary in 1993 when it came out, but by 2004 and a whole 12 model years later, it had become out of date and found everywhere. Another thing that may have caused sales to start to slump was some major cost cutting done by Daimler Chrysler in 2002, as we discussed. They took away many features of the Intrepid, and these weren't anything premium, but rather basic stuff. So you'll see on screen just a lot of switches and lights and very basic features. So they kind of cheaped out and made a more bare-bones version of the Intrepid for the last few years, which certainly didn't help sales to grow. Unfortunately, reliability issues would also plague the Intrepid. This isn't necessarily why it got cancelled, but I wanted to add it in since it can be seen as a big flaw of the car. There are good ones out there. I'm sure many people will post in the comments about how their Intrepid is still going strong, but on the flip side, I'm sure many others will also talk about their issues they had. The issues began with the engines, which we'll look at shortly, and continued on to the transmission, air conditioning, and interior finish. Website carcomplaints.com has hundreds of complaints every year for all the Intrepid models in many different areas. The website also lists the 2000 Intrepid as the very worst model for complaints out of every other Dodge vehicle ever made. As you can see on screen, the Consumer Guide website also listed many trouble spots and recalls for both generations of the car, and there were a lot of them again in many different areas, from automatic transmission issues, to oil leaks, to electrical problems. According to the website Dashboard Light, the first gen ranked well below average, while the second gen ranked as chronic reliability issues. And when compared to the other full-size vehicles for reliability, the Intrepid was literally at the bottom of the list, and they also had more annual defects than the industry average as well. Another website called Dodge Problems gave the second gen Intrepid a pain rank of 59.66, making it the worst ranked vehicle on the site with nearly 2,000 complaints. You just don't see as many of these Intrepids today as you would for the other cars, say from Toyota or Lexus from the same time frame, so reliability definitely was a concern here. The final major flaw of the Intrepid was the awful 2.7-liter V6 engine, along with the related 3.2 and 3.5 V6s, but that's not too big of a deal. First, let's start with the 2.7. These engines were prone to suffer failures due to oil sludge contamination, and often they would only last a maximum of 80,000 to 100,000 miles, even with regular maintenance. A buildup of oil sludge was common due to an insufficient oil capacity, and the timing chain-driven water pump would leak into the crankcase. The oil sludge issue didn't affect every engine, but for many they completely failed and there was nothing the owner could do to prevent it. Missed or late oil changes also proved to be dangerous on this engine and caused premature failure. Another common issue was the water pump gasket failing and slowly leaking coolant internally, which would dilute the oil, and those leaks would also cause engine failure. Remember, the 2.7 was the base engine for the second generation, so there were a lot of them out there. If the engines were meticulously maintained, they might have had a better chance, but the average car owner doesn't really check under the hood or know how to look for problems. DodgeProblems.com shows that the average engine failure is around 90,000 miles for the 2.7, which is pretty sad to say the least. Also, take a look at how SavageCarComplaints.com was when they talked about this engine. Quote, if someone offers to sell you a 2.7-liter V6 model, it's only worth the price of the scrap metal it's going to shortly turn into. The only true fix we know about is to put in the larger 3.2-liter V6 engine. This issue was never deemed a safety defect by the feds, so there was no recall. In the end, Chrysler got away with 4 years' worth of defective 2.7 engines in their sedans. End quote. There were also 5 separate class action lawsuits in New Jersey regarding the oil sludge defects. These disastrous engines definitely put a dent in the Intrepid nameplate over the years, as more people chose to stay away. By 2004, many of the issues had started to be fixed by Chrysler, but still, it should have been more developed before being released, and it was unfair for customers to have so many issues with these engines. Some of the 3.5 and 3.2 engines had their various issues as well, like lubrication issues, oil sludging, coolant leaks, overheating, and low mileage engine failures, but nothing close to as bad as the 2.7. So that's the end of the video, guys. Thanks for watching and hopefully you enjoyed it. What do you think about the Intrepid? Did you ever own one or do you still do? And were there other reasons for its cancellation that I might have missed? Let me know in the comments section below. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel if you're new, and follow along for all your Mopar content. I'll see you in the next video.